Enlightenment is the final part of the Black Guardian trilogy. In fairness, it barely counts as a trilogy, as the Black Guardian barely featured in Terminus, but this is a fine resolution to the story begun in Mordred Undead, as Turlough finally chooses a side and becomes a proper companion to the Doctor. And it's one of the most impressive stories of the era as well. Fiona Cummings' excellent direction is evident right from the start. The TARDIS scenes are lit beautifully, and the familiar console room feels very different without the usual harsh lighting. The whole first episode has an air of mystery and exploration, as the big reveal is saved for the end, so the Doctor and his gang are left to investigate this creepy ship, a bit like the first episode of Carnival of Monsters. And all of the ship sets are impressively detailed and feel very convincing. Once we get the reveal that the ships are flying through space, we get some beautiful model shots of sailing ships against the galactic background, and the juxtaposition makes this one of the most memorable visual effects of the entire series. We also learn that the crew are Eternals, godlike beings who play at being human. Keith Barron does a surprisingly good job as Captain Stryker. He's mainly remembered for sitcoms like Duty Free, but here he is chillingly emotionless. In the scene where he learns the Doctor is a Time Lord, his line, "A Lord of Time? Are there lords in such a small domain?" is beautifully delivered and breathtaking in its implications. Peter Davison gets to display righteous anger at the Eternals using human beings for their games. It's always good to see the Doctor facing off against beings vastly more powerful than himself. Meanwhile, Tegan has the closest thing to a romance that she's going to get, as the Eternal Mariner becomes obsessed with her. It's very much in the tradition of vampire stories, where a creepy immortal being becomes obsessed with a human woman, like Dracula or Twilight. Here there's no blood and the sexual element is left as subtext, but he's still feeding off her life and vitality, and Christopher Brown has a great chemistry with Janet Fielding, so their scenes together are electric. Turlough also has a lot going on, so desperate to escape the clutches of the Black Guardian, he even throws himself off the deck of the ship. The deck scenes are shot on film against a black backdrop, so they feel distinctly otherworldly, and they're a good match for the model ship effects. Turlough ends up on board the pirate ship Buccaneer, with Captain Rack, played by Linda Barron, no relation to Keith. She is also better known for sitcoms, but her performance here is nowhere near as subtle as Keith's is, and she even talks into the camera at one point. Still, it does suit the character, and she's a lot better than her subordinate. Mansell, played by Lee John, who doesn't seem to have done any acting before this story, or after it, or arguably during. Rack works for the Black Guardian, so Valentine Dial is back for one final time. He's more threatening than ever, as he literally strangles Turlough, and he develops a nasty habit of cackling like a car that won't start. It's never entirely clear when the Doctor figures out that Turlough is working for him. There is no big confrontation, no moment of realisation, so it's possible he knew all along. But they leave it ambiguous, which is very unusual, and adds to the more mature feeling of this story. The final scene has both Guardians together. Cyril Luckham returns as the White Guardian, totally unrecognisable from the Rebos operation. He's now clean-shaven, and instead of a hat, he's wearing a swan on his head, for no apparent reason. Possibly it's there to match the raven that's been perched on Valentine Dial's head for the past 3 stories. It all comes down to Turlough having to decide whether to accept the ultimate prize of everything he's ever wanted in his entire life, but it would mean having to sacrifice the Doctor. So of course Turlough gives up the prize and gets to carry on travelling with 2 people who hate him. Well, okay, the Doctor does seem to have come round by the end, but Tegan will be a lot harder to convince. The DVD has more than an hour of extras, spread out over 2 discs. Winner Takes All is the longest, 23 minutes making of with the cast and crew. Everyone praises the director and the sets. There is much comment on Tegan's low-cut dress. Mark Strickson talks about how he was injured during a stunt. And we learn that Peter Sallis of Wallace and Gromit fame was originally cast as the captain. Imagine that. Full steam ahead, lad. We've got to get the prize. A lifetime supply of Wensleydale. And then there's casting off, which is really more of the same, where everybody just talks about the guest cast. Single white female, where the writer Barbara Clegg gets to tell her life story. And the story of the Guardians, where a Doctor Who magazine editor talks through all of the Guardian stories with contributions from the children of the actors. On disc 2, there's Finding Mark Strickson, where Mark talks through his career. Finding Sarah Sutton, where Sarah does the same. And there's an extract from Russell Harty's Christmas Party from 1982, where Peter Davison and his wife tell some very bad jokes and then sing a terrible song. This was primetime entertainment back in the day. But the main feature is a 74-minute edited version of the story with added CGI effects. The original model shots were much more effective in my opinion, but this version does improve the action sequences, like when they travel through Venus's atmosphere, or when Turlough is rescued after falling off the ship. So it's not bad, just a different way of telling the story. I'd still recommend people watch the original first though. Finally, there's Enlightenment, where you get to eavesdrop on Fiona Cumming and the producer, talking through their decisions about the re-edit. It's all very technical, but it does give you a bit more insight into their process. Overall, an excellent story with a unique atmosphere and fine performances all round. I'll give it 9 out of 10. Next week, The King's Demons. Just 2 episodes, so that should be a short video. But I'm not slacking off. Later this week, I'll have a review of the latest Doctor Who comics collection, Black Sun Rising. So press subscribe if you're interested in either of those, and I'll see you next time.